This is episode 152. Today I talk with Philippe Jaeger. Philippe is a hunting journalist in France, and for the last 2 decades, for over 2 decades, he's traveling the world for hunting reportage. What is interesting is that Philippe started as an anti-hunter. In his youth, he was a member of a radical anti-hunting organization, and so you can imagine this is like a pretty interesting transition. I met Philippe in April on the International Journalism Symposium on sustainable use of wildlife resources, and his talk was very interesting, especially when he was talking about anti-hunting organizations and all these social aspects, how the hunting is being perceived, and I just knew I got to have him on the podcast. So that day is today. And during our conversation, we talked obviously about his transition from anti-hunter to hunter, pretty hardcore hunter. But we talk about more important aspects as well, as how to talk to non-hunters, how to represent hunting, how to talk about hunting, how to make sure that people understand hunting. We talk about photos, hunting photos on social media. We talk about trophy hunting. Very interesting subjects for everybody who is a hunter or even non-hunter, but is interested by the interface between hunting and non-hunting and conservation. So I'm sure you will enjoy this episode as much as I enjoyed talking with Philippe on this podcast and earlier offline, because as you can imagine, we had a few conversations. So I'm really happy to be able to bring you that episode. And before I let you enjoy it, as always, just one call to action. Subscribe to my newsletter. If you're interested in stuff that we talk about here on Tommy's Outdoors, Conservation and Science, which is mainly conservation and science, but also human-wildlife interactions, which is hunting and fishing, and in general, the overlap of all those subjects. Much more than just subjects that we discuss on the podcast, are in the newsletter. So subscribe to my newsletter, newsletter.tommysoutdoors.com. The link is in the description of the show. And actually, what I would like to ask you is get into the description of this show on whatever podcast app you're using and just explore it. There's a link to a newsletter. There are links to my social media if you like to follow me on social media, and many more. Also, you can support the podcast by buying me a coffee. All those things are in the description of the show. So go in there and click on the link, right? So now, without any further delay, Philippe Jaeger, from anti-hunter to advocate. Philippe, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to see you and talk to you again.
Hi, Tommy. It's a pleasure.
Some people might know that we met just last week on the International Journalism Symposium.
Yes.
On conservation and sustainable use. And you shared with us quite remarkable story of your journey in hunting. You started as an anti-hunter, and then you transitioned to hunting journalist who traveled for 20 years for hunting reportage. So can you share with us that story? How this happened that you were anti-hunter first and then you transitioned back to hunting side?
In the very, very beginning, I'm born in a family where nobody is hunting and nobody is anti-hunting. We were just neutral, like most of the people, actually. And then at some stage, I had a bad meeting with a hunter who tried to force me to leave the forest where I was working with my dog, where it's skiing, to be precise. I was cross skiing with my dog, and he went out of his car and was shouting with me, asking me to leave the place, and so on. So you can imagine that when you have such a meeting with somebody, it's not the best way to be a friend with him. And later on, I was contacted by some people that they were members of anti-hunting organization, and I jumped into this kind of movement because when you are a teenager, well, you don't really think about all the facts you are doing sometimes. So for a few years, I was really active in that kind of movement. And later, I went to agricultural school, where I had the opportunity to meet some people working for the Ministry of Environment in France. They were involved in hunting and sustainable use subjects, scientific works about ducks, migratory birds, and so on. And so my mind began to change regarding hunting. And then I went into the bird watching subject, which is still one of my hobby. I have not a lot of time to do it, but well, I'm still very, very interested in bird life and so on. And then I began to work, and as a sales manager, I had some clients. They were hunters, and when you have clients face to face, you can't really tell them, "Hey guys, I hate you because you are hunters." So you have to be a little bit diplomatic sometimes, and especially when they are your clients. And so they proposed me to join them on some hunts, and it was my real first contact with the hunting world. And well, I was 20, 22, 23, something like that. So you are a little bit less nervous than when you are a teenager, and you begin to think about what you are doing and what you are thinking. And so I discovered something that was not so terrible at the end. And then step by step, I went regularly with them to the forest. We had some activities like building high seats, land management, and so on. And after 1 year, I decided to get my hunting license, which is not really complicated in France, but nevertheless, you have an exam. And it's the way I began my hunter's life.
You mentioned that you were influenced as a young teenager by those anti-hunting groups. And obviously, it's that age where people are getting quite easily influenced by different things. Do you feel like hunting, in general, hunters and hunting are doing pretty poor job at also influencing and kind of like encouraging young people to get into hunting? Because I guess this is a problem across the world, that age of hunters are going up and up and up, and we're not really getting new people or young people into hunting.
You have two ways of considering your question and my answer. On one hand, it would be easy to say, yes, hunters are doing bad job regarding communication with youngsters and so on. And the facts are really clear. You mentioned it, the average age is going up. The number of hunters almost all over the world, and specifically in France, is decreasing very strongly. So yes, for sure, there is a problem. But on the other hand, I am the perfect example that somebody who gets on one side can jump on the other side later in his life. It means you can be anti-hunting and then pro-hunting, but it means also that you can be pro-hunter and then get to the other side. There are a lot of examples. You can find people that change the mind. You can be a meat eater, carnivore, and then getting into the vegan and the other way. Okay, nothing is really, I think in life, nothing is really fixed. People would like that everything is like that in a square, but thanks God it's not like that. And movements are always possible. But nevertheless, to be back to your question, yes, we have a problem about how hunting and hunters, because this can be also a point of discussion. There is something different between hunting and hunters. But for sure, today in the modern civilization, most of the time, hunting is not really the most fancy thing you can do on the weekend or while you are on a hobby. Nevertheless, I think everything can change very fast, and especially now in our modern world, thanks to the technology, for example, and communication way of social media, for example, and so on. If you jump into that kind of technology, I think it can change things very fast. And for sure, I speak about France now. Hunters have lost a lot of time doing that. We have other examples, for example, in Germany, where hunters and Hunters Federation have done a great job since 20 years now. And the situation there is much more comfortable for hunters and hunting than it is in France. In France, for a long time and still now, our Hunters Federation thinks that because we are a lot of people, we are a little bit less than 1 million in France, which is the country in Europe where you have the most hunters. They still believe that it's enough to be approximately 1 million to influence law and to influence people. We have the proof today that it was a wrong strategy and the wrong way of leading. And things are beginning to change slowly because it's a very traditional world. Hunting, it's, I don't know, more traditional way of thinking than hunters most of the time. So it takes time. It should not take too much time because I think we are getting into the red zone now. But when you see what is going on, you have still young people coming to the hunting activity, and more women, for example. You have more and more people coming from, like me, a family where nobody is hunting, people living in a town, not in the countryside. At the end, hunting, what is hunting? The first reason which takes you out to the field is to get meat in your fridge. It's the only reason which you can find when you look at what you are doing out in the field with a rifle or with a shotgun. It's because you want to get some meat, and game meat is the best meat you can eat, and it's local, so you have the best arguments with the game meat, the venison, as we say, to gain people into the hunting world. But as I said last week when we spoke together, you need to be honest with people. If you want to win people, and if you want them to at least understand what we are doing, and why not join the hunting world, you need to be honest. And the best way to be honest when you kill an animal is to eat the meat and to share the meat with other people. Once you do that, as long as you are speaking with honest people also, they can't tell you it's bad to go hunting. They still, if you are vegan people, for example, they still can tell you, no, I don't want to eat meat and I don't want to kill animals. That's fine. I'm fine with that. We need to accept. And the goal of hunting today and Hunters Federation, for example, should not be to get more and more and more people into the hunting boat, but just to be accepted. We are a minority. We will still be a minority. It's hopefully not 80 million people will hunt. Otherwise, everything will disappear. Because nature and natural resources can't feed all the world population today. We need still agriculture and farmers. But nevertheless, just to be accepted, and that the other people, the non-hunters, look at us like normal people, reasonable people that care about nature, that care about biodiversity. This should be our goal today.
You mentioned honesty
and this is something like, man, that resonated with me so much, because part of what I was saying many times is that I don't like when hunters are, looking for these like fake reasons they hunt. Or just like, oh, it is all about conservation, or it is all about controlling invasive species, or this is all about agricultural damage. And like someone said, like if you're so worried about the farming practices of your farmer friend, and you ask them how you can help, they will give you a shovel, not ask you to go and hunt on their land. So I totally agree with you that this honest element of it is important, because then people who are anti-hunting, they can easily see through this, like, oh, yeah, you're just trying to kind of like make stuff up. It's not really what you're after. And so would you agree that we need to more of like a seeking acceptance for hunting based on, here I say, recreational aspect of it, rather than coming up with the ideas like, oh, this is all for conservation, we are all conservationists? Like, no, you're not, right? It's like you're conservationist only because it's like within the framework that feeds the money to conservation or something like that. But you're actually, when you're taking your rifle, you're not going, do conservation work. You're doing that for fun, you're doing that for meat, you're doing that for other reasons. So do you think this is the angle we should take when talking about hunting?
For sure. For sure, 100%. I told you I was birdwatcher, and then I went into the hunting, and still I am birdwatching. It's not something which is opposite. But I will never say to anybody, I go hunting because I love nature. I love to listen to the birds when the sun is rising in the morning, and blah, blah, blah. That's all fake. I go hunting because when I'm a bird watcher, I'm spectator of nature. You are sitting, like when you go to the cinema or to the theater, you are sitting in the room, and other people are standing in front of you, and they do the show. And that's why probably also I went someday in the hunting, because something was missing. I was working around with my bino, and I was counting birds, I was ringing birds, I was doing so many things, but something was still missing because I was not an actor. And when I walk around in my forest with my rifle on my shoulder, seeking for a roe deer or a wild boar or a reindeer that I want to kill, I'm an actor. I'm an actor. I'm really part of the game, which you can't be when you have just a bino around your neck. And that's the big difference between the hunters and the other people. We are killing animals, and we have a good reason to do so, because we want to eat them or we want to share the meat with other people. For sure, I plant trees, I plant a lot of things. I do everything what is possible on my hunting estate. That the place is good for nesting birds, for bats, for flowers, for whatever you want. That's also part of hunting. I don't say that we don't do it, but to do that, you don't need to be a hunter. As you say, you can grab a shovel, dig a hole in the ground, plant a tree or 2 or 3 or 300. You don't need to be a hunter to do that. But to kill an animal, you need to be a hunter. And that's the difference.
You mentioned, like, when we were talking last week, you also, it was kind of like a surreal experience, because you were picking up on all those things that are kind of like I so often talked on my podcast and with other people. So that's what I was saying. Like, yeah, I gotta get you on the podcast. You picked up on the often purposeful confusion or by media, by mass media, often purposely confusing the term hunter and the term poacher. And saying, and obviously during our conversation, that discussion went into very interesting directions that in a countries which are not as developed as France or Ireland or UK, then that really difference between hunter and a poacher becomes really blurry, because who is who, and like you talk about indigenous hunting and so on and so forth. But in the realities that you and I live with, and most of the listeners of this podcast, there is pretty much clear difference who a poacher is and who a hunter is. And I just want to hear some of your thoughts on this. Do you think this is done on purpose by papers and media outlets confusing these two terms, and that way putting hunters in a bad light by describing poachers as hunters? Or do you think that there is an element of genuine misunderstanding and probably a room for improvement by hunting organizations to again challenge those quotes of those articles and say like, hey, that's not actually hunting, that's poaching, that's something else?
We didn't mention it still now, but as you know, I'm a hunting journalist. So since 25 years, I write articles for hunting magazines. So my readers are mainly hunters. So as a journalist, I know the power of words. It's a real power. And I know the sense of words, the semantic, as we say in French. I don't know if it's the same in English. When you use a word, it means something. And a hunter is a hunter, a poacher is a poacher. It is not the same. If I tell you that a tomato is blue, you will tell me, Philippe, you have a problem with your eyes. So when you use the word hunter for a poacher, it's not the way you should work as a journalist. So for sure, when I hear, and it's very often in France, we have global media, they regularly they speak about the elephants in Africa, the bears in whatever country, which are killed by hunters. No. Well, regarding the elephant, sometimes it can be hunters, because in some places in Africa, it's completely legal to hunt an elephant. But most of the time when they speak about that, they speak about poachers that work for Chinese guys who want the tusk for the Chinese medicine or for the rhino and so on. So the power of word, again, is very important. And we should not, as hunters and as hunters organizations, we should not leave 1 millimeter of freedom to those journalists or to those people who pretend to be journalists that use the wrong word to speak about a real subject. We should not leave them 1 millimeter of space. And unfortunately, we do. And that's why today also you have it's so easy for those people, to make bad words about hunters, which in fact are poachers. Then another point about that subject, I was regularly in Africa and in different countries for my job to write reportage and to make movies. And for sure, last time when I was in Tanzania, for example, while we were out in the bush hunting, we saw poachers. And it was very strange, because the guy, the first things our hunting guide told me, he told me, be ready to shoot. I was not expecting to shoot on a poacher, on a human being, while I was hunting buffalo. So as a European guy, I was quite surprised. Then I could understand later that, yes, in some cases, the fact to hit into a poaching group can be quite dangerous, and they can shoot at you. So your life is in danger. But first I was completely shocked. And then we stayed where we were, and they went out with a scout, a wildlife scout. They catched the guy who was poaching, and they took it back to us. It was a man. He was approximately, 60 years old. he was thin like my finger, because he never had something to eat, and obviously he was living there. Okay, he was born there, he was living there, and probably he will die there. And he was poaching because that guy had nothing to eat. So then you have a big question, is that guy a poacher? If you consider the legal frame, yes, he's a poacher because he's killing animals and he's not allowed by the government to do so on that place. But then you have also to consider the fact that this guy is living here and he has probably more rights than I, as a French hunter, to kill an animal there and to eat it and to feed his family. So it's very complicated. It's a subject which is very, very complicated. You have to be very careful before just telling, those bad people and blah, 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 blah. For sure, when we speak about criminal groups with heavy weapons paid by, I will say Chinese, but if Chinese listen to me, they will think I'm a very bad guy and I hate Chinese, but no. But it's a fact, in Africa, a lot of Chinese organizations are, and everybody knows that it's not just a discovering, it's not a scoop that I give you. They kill animals for the Chinese medicine or for illegal traffic of elephant tusks, for example. And they leave the animals, the carcasses there. The meat is not used. They just want to take the tusks of the bone and so on. So this is another thing, and for sure you have to be against that kind of poaching. But I would just try to be a little bit careful about two ways and two different reasons and two different profiles of those guys who do that. If you do that to feed your family, for sure it's still illegal. But sometimes we should think about why those people need to do that in 2023, while we are hunting buffalo and we pay thousands of dollars to do that. So I don't take position, but just that people understand that sometimes we should not react immediately and just think about why.
100%, and I think this is something that applies in general to all those conversations, that people tend to jump to conclusions very easily and then be angry about it. It's like, oh, this, that. While, like you said, it is the picture is very complex, and sometimes there are no easy answers to all those things. Listen, I want to come back a little bit to something that we talked before, and even in Paris and the conference, we heard that I'm going to paraphrase. It's not direct quote, but paraphrase that in hunting, we obviously, I think everyone is aware of the problems with the social acceptance for hunting, and we, as hunting organizations, we have this idea that, okay, we're going to present the data, we're going to present the facts and data, and here's data, here's the facts, here's like all these things. And they don't really seem to work. And like, if anyone has any interest in neurobiology and how our brain works, knows that emotion wins every single time when it confronted with a rational brain, factual brain. Emotions always trumps that. So I think that it was like part of what you said as well. Like, how are we gonna explain the emotions related to what's going on? How are we gonna start using emotional stories to talk about hunting and to explain hunting to people who are either neutral, or there maybe are there a little bit of anti-hunting, they don't understand that, like how, because like, in fairness, all the anti-hunting message is highly emotional, right? Oh, these poor animals, furry babies, quotes like that. So how how it is possible? What would be your advice to start using that language, or maybe how to convey the emotions behind hunting and behind motivation to go and hunt?
That's not an easy question, Toby, because an emotion is something each human being feels different. Some people will think that the sunrise is very emotional. The other ones will think that the sunset is much more emotional than the sunrise. That's just an example. We speak about almost the same thing, but you can feel it different. I think that most of the hunters are feeling what they do differently. The best example is that some hunters have no problem hunting zebra, for example, in Africa. We have millions of them. It's a hunting species, no problem, huntable species. And some hunters will tell you, never in my life I will shoot a zebra. Closer to us, some hunters have no problem doing what we call a culling plan, which is a number of animals you need to shoot each year, and that's the forestry administration most of the time who tells you have to shoot X numbers of animals, including males, females, and young. Some hunters will have no problem to kill males, but others will tell you, I don't want to shoot females, I don't want to shoot young ones. So it's really a question of people, you know. What is important, I think, in the communication with other people is to make them understand that killing an animal is not something you do like, what can I say, when you are breathing. When you kill an animal, you have to think about what you do, how you do, and why you do it. It's really deep, you know. I remember the first time when I was beginning, as I told you, I didn't grow up in a family of hunters. So for me, the first time I killed an animal, wow, it was terrible. And it's still, I'm hunting now since more than 30 years. And each time when I kill an animal, it's shaking me inside, you know. And it's a lot of, I almost would say stress. Because you have a so great responsibility doing that. It's unbelievable. So you have to be 300% focused on what you do, and you need to manage completely the situation. You know, you manage the gear you use. You have to be sure about the training you had before. You need to take all the measures in front, so that once you are in the situation of pulling the trigger, all the chances are on your side to kill quick and efficient. And then from that point, once the animal is dead on the floor, then you can release your emotions and your feelings. That's it's very complicated to explain that, you know, because some people will tell you, well, if you are not able to do it, so leave it. But nevertheless, I know a lot of hunters, they are really faked about what they do when they kill an animal, you know. Some people are crying, even sometimes, because they have so much emotions. But personally, because I can't speak about what the other is feeling, but personally, yes, it's a huge responsibility to do that for me. It's a huge privilege because not everybody can run around in the forest with a rifle killing animals. So it's a big responsibility regarding the other people. So yes, just to finish with that, everybody feels different, but believe me, it's something which is unbelievable. I don't know another hobby which takes you so far in responsibility.
Philippe, there are two other things that I would like to get your views on. You probably heard about the quite a strong movement now to ban imports of trophies from Africa in the UK. Some discussions are in the US, in California. And, again, this goes back to the honesty. And I just want your opinion about this. So common view is that if those bans will go ahead and it will be prohibited to import hunting trophies from Africa to European countries, that will negatively impact the conservation, livelihoods of people in Africa, etc., etc., etc. On the other hand, the argument, which I think is a fairly strong argument, is like, oh, if you're really going on a hunt for the experience, for being part of nature, for participations, from all those things, why would, the prohibition of bringing that bone back stop you from doing that? You still can get, 80% of your experience or 100% of your experience minus the trophy you're bringing back home. So I am just wondering, of your view, is that the legitimate concern? Is that concern not really true, and those hunters will still go on a hunt? Because, in fairness, if you're paying 120 grand to shoot an elephant, you are pretty dedicated. Unless that 120 grand is something that, you happen to be very rich and is not an issue. But usually these are very dedicated people and they're going on those bucket list hunts. So curious of your view on that. Is it really, only smokescreen that this is all about participation in nature and all that, but really you're after this, trophy? Or these concerns are a little bit, exaggerated because those hunters will still be going to Africa and hunting and paying money and doing all those things?
It's a complicated subject. And again, you have a lot of ways to consider the subject. First of all, I will do something that is never done when we speak about trophy import ban. Ask Africans, for example, or people living in the countries where you can have hunting tourism. Ask them what they think about that. It should be the first step before we discuss about anything else. The very, very first step. Those animals are living there. They belong to them. They live with the animals, and nobody takes care about what they think. It's really surprising. And it's even more surprising when you consider the fact that those who support projects like import of ban of trophy importing in UK or in France or Europe or USA, whatever, those who support those kind of projects are the first, who on the other hand, we don't do politics here, I appreciate, but on the other hand, they will tell you, we need to be equal between white and black. We need to be equal between the Occidental world and the other countries, and so on, which is fine, no problem. But why do they have those two different ways of thinking? On one hand, we have to be equal, we have to respect them, and blah, blah, blah. And on the other hand, we don't care about what they think. We just want to ban hunting in Africa and to ban import of trophy. It's not logic. So that's the first thing. And we spoke about it with our African colleague last week. Then the facts. Yes, hunting tourism can be, I say can be, not is, can be a very strong way of getting money into countries and regions where they need the money. They need the money to build roads, they need the money to build schools, hospitals, they need the money to live, very simply. So Yes, hunting tourism can be a very strong support to bring quality of life to those people who want that quality of life. Um, it's not because they are living in the middle of the bush in Africa that they are very happy to see that out of 10 children, only one is surviving. So that's one point. But, because there is always a but, it's very, very complicated to get the figures about where the money is going. And even if you ask the people from the CIC, like where we met last week, they have no real figures. And you have no official figures. So for me, it's a big matter of question. If a hunter spend, let's say, 2,000, 20,000, or 200,000 euros or dollars, I would appreciate that the share of the lion goes to the lion and not in between all those people who, at the end, has no real added value. The added value of hunting tourism is where you hunt. In Africa, in Asia, in Europe, sometimes you have hunting tourism in Europe, in America. The money has to go to as close as possible to the people who live there. So, yes, it can be an economic support for those people and for those communities. But for the moment, I never found the official figures that shows me that fact. As long as I don't have those figures, I have the feeling that, for example, as a French hunter, if I call a hunting tourism agency in Paris, for instance, they will keep most of the money for them. And the people at the end, where I will go hunting, they don't really see the big part of it. And I think that's a big pity. So when I'm hunting abroad, I always try, when it's possible, to go as close as possible to the local community where I will hunt. So I'm sure you have less people in between, if you understand what I mean. But the subject about banning the import of trophy is a wrong subject. It's completely wrong subject because you won't save the elephants, you won't save the rhino, you won't save nothing, even the biotops, if you ban the import of trophy. You won't save nothing because people who do it illegally, the poachers we spoke about, will continue to do it, and the people who are ready to pay a lot of money to take them home because it's their souvenir, and we are not in a position to judge if it's good or bad to take such a souvenir at home as long as it is legal. I am not God. So if somebody is happy to put elephant tusks in his living room, as long as the elephant was taken legally, the meat was used by the local community, and everything was done in the legal frame, for me, it's fine. Where is the problem? I don't tell you which color you should paint your house. It's not my right and it's not my problem, as long as you do it in the legal frame. So for the trophy hunting and the import of trophy, it's exactly the same. It has to be legal. The money has to go to the local communities as much as possible, and then everything will be fine. And as long as we do it in that frame, we need to think about the fact that you only protect what you like and what you can benefit from. If local communities get money out of hunting and hunting tourism, they will accept the part of risk which belongs to live with those animals. and they will accept the part of the disadvantage that they have to live with those animals. Because, it's very easy when you are sitting in a tower in Paris, in London, or in New York, to take very great decisions about what is going on in the bush, in the African bush. Okay? But when you are living there, when each morning the women have to walk 15 kilometers through the bush to pick up water at the water hole, and that when they go away from home, they are not sure to come back because they could meet a lion, a hippo, or things like that. Everything can happen in the bush. So they are not like we are in our house with a lot of comfort, pushing a button and they have light, turning, and they have water, warm water, hot water, and they can mix and blah, blah, blah. So they are not living in the same world. And as long as those people are living with elephants and lions and whatever that can kill them, they will accept this part of risk because I know that those animals are also supporting an economy which they benefit from. We should never forget about that.
Philippe, one other question. Very curious of your opinion on that, because you're a hunting journalism. You were involved in also with Leica and some events that they're doing. What is your view on? And this is sort of like a nice segue from hunting trophies to trophy photos. What are your view on trophy photos? On maybe not trophy photos, but on photos of the dead animals. Where is the line? Because on one hand, you will go, okay, let's be honest, like we said earlier, this is about, we killing the animal. This is how the killed animal looks like. It's dead. There is a hole in it and there is a blood. On the other hand, there's like, well, maybe it's better to not show these dead animals, right? And here's also like a difference where like whether you taking a picture of like something that looks like absolute bloodshed, right? Because you hit the animal in the heart, it bleeded profusely, and everything was, even if everything was fine from the humanitarian point of view or ethical point of view, it just doesn't look right. Where is that boundary? What is your opinion as a journalist? Is in a current setup, photos of dead animals are no? Is it like, okay, you do like a big close-up and make it black and white and kind of like try to present that in a, nice artistic way? Or is it, this is what we do, this is how the dead deer looks like, and, deal with it sort of thing? So curious of your opinion on that.
Well, the opinion is very easy. As you mentioned it, I'm working in close relation with a company called Leica Camera. And it's a privilege for me because we are working together since more than 15 years now. And they are very much involved in photography business. And they have also a small part of the business, which is sport optic, that I use for hunting and bird watching. Sport optics, this is binoculars, telescopes, rangefinders, and rifle scopes. And they teach me, because I was like all the young hunters and all the hunters we can see nowadays in the social media, I was just, I had no really idea about how to take a picture. And taking a picture about a dead animal is a very sensitive subject, especially when you publish it, like everybody do it now, on the social media. And all the world has access to what you publish. And sometimes I have the feeling that people forget about that responsibility. As soon as you put a picture on the social media, you have the planet can access it. And as I said, we are a minority. It was a really, really small minority. And so first of all, we should not share this intimate. It's something really intimate. When you kill an animal, I say before, your feelings, it's not something you can show to the world. That's your moment. That's your thing. It's your animal. It has nothing to do on the social media. And then especially when you see some pictures where the animal is full with blood and the guys are like that, with thumbs up and wow, I'm so strong, I'm so good. It's a disaster, to publish things like that. But yes, we have to be honest, as I said before, and you can show. It's a way of showing it. You can show that animal, but obviously not like what we say, thumbs up with a rifle on the animal, with a foot on the animal, or sitting on the animal, or whatever. That's just awful, and it's not respectful regarding the animal you just killed, okay? But to show the animal when you carry it on your backpack, or just a piece of it, or when you cut it, to eat it, you have to take the skin away, you have to roll the animal and so on. That's the hygienic part of the treatment of the venison. You can show those things. Yes, it's a dead animal, but it's not just a dead animal and you are like that, you're not the right male hunter succeeding on the beast. No, that's the wrong way. But if you show how you cut the meat, how you take off the skin, even how you prepare the trophy, for instance, because you need to cook it and blah, blah, blah. Yes, you can. Then it's not a problem because you explain something. You explain the meat we eat is not falling down from the sky. Before you eat meat, you have to kill the animal. Whether it's a cow or whether it's a roe deer, at some stage we kill the animal. So yes, the fact to explain that we kill is something which I think is important. So we don't need to take it away. It's like, in the old days, people were dying at home, and from the child to the parents to the uncle and aunt, everybody was at home, and the dead man or woman was in his bed, and everybody could see what is death. Nowadays, we try to live in a kind of magic world where everything is beautiful, but no, life is death, and death is life. That's the circle of life, and that's it, that's reality. So we can show a dead animal, it's not a problem for me, but there are some rules that everybody should take care not to shock people that are not hunters, especially in our society where death is taking beside.
Yeah, that's excellent. That's excellent summary. Overall, Philippe, where from the point where you are, where you sit, how do you think, or how do you envisage the future of hunting will play out? Is this are we on a downward slope, and this is just a matter of time when hunting will be gone in a society, regardless whether we're talking 10 or 50 or 100 years? Or do you think that, there is on one hand a little bit of a wake-up call in a hunting organizations about what's going on, and then on the other hand, the hunting is so deeply ingrained into our psyche, into our the fabric of who we are as humans, that in one shape or form or another, hunting will survive? What are your, like a prognosis for the future for hunting?
I have no crystal ball, so it's complicated to tell you what will be going on tomorrow or even in 1 year. But again, as I said, you have hunters and you have hunting. So if your question is what about hunting, there is one answer. And if your question is what about hunters, it's another answer. So I will answer your question about hunting. Hunting will remain as long as you will have animals, and those animals are having that addiction. So hunting is a necessity to keep everything in balance, because life is a question of balance, and we can see it very clearly, even with the human beings, when you have an overpopulation, you have problems. Whether you have no more food, whether you have no more water, no more space, no more whatever. But when you are too many, at some stage, it's too much. So for the animals, it's exactly the same. Look at what is going on with the wild boars, for example. They destroy a lot of agriculture land. So you need an action to keep the balance. Regarding hunters, it's something else. Those hunters, they could decrease very strong. They could increase depending on how the society will evolve. And those hunters can be hobby hunters, or they can be professional hunters. But still, hunting will survive. Somebody has to do the job, whether it's a paid job or it's a hobby. But somebody has to do it. So I'm not really afraid about hunting until hunting will remain. As long as you have animals that needs to be regulated, you will have hunting. The only question is who will be the hunters and how many do we need to do the job?
I agree with that. I agree with that view. What advice would you give to hunters, maybe especially the younger hunters, but then hunters in general? What should they do? I'm just teasing, some words of wisdom from you to the hunters. What should they do to ensure the future of recreational hunting and the future of hunting as a hobby rather than only a professional endeavor?
I don't like to give advice because it puts you in a situation where you are the wise guy who knows everything. I think humility is very important for all the hunters, whether they are young or whether they are old. Very often I have the feeling that there is a lack of humility. And that's another point I wanted to speak with you. We have more and more women huntress now, and they have another approach than the males. But regarding globally, I think we need more humility. For the elder ones, humility is concerning the fact that it's not because you are hunting since I don't know how many years, 50 years or 60 years, that you know everything. That's not right, because each time when you go out, yes, you have a knowledge for sure. When you are 60, you have a knowledge for sure. But don't stand on the knowledge thinking that now everything is done and you know everything. Because with nature, and especially with hunting, you learn each time you go out, you have to learn. So that's for the old ones. And for the young ones, the same. Be kind and be impregnated with a lot of humility. Because when I look at the social media with young hunters, sometimes I just want to cry. They are 18, 19, 20, or whatever. They are young human beings, they are young hunters. But you have the feeling they know everything. They have seen everything because they know how to use a smartphone. That's not life. That's not life. That's just a tool to call somebody or to check your emails. It doesn't make you somebody which is good man or a good woman. And when you have the responsibility to kill animals, because it's our goal, you need to be very low profile. Take it easy. Everything will be fine, but don't behave like a Superman.
Wise words, Philippe. Thank you so much for this conversation. It's been really great, and I'm sure a lot of people learned a lot from you.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure, Tony.